We've all been there. That moment when we realize we messed up. Maybe it was something we said in the heat of the moment. Maybe it was something we failed to do. Or maybe it was just a lapse in judgment, a choice that hurt someone we care about. And as soon as it happens, our minds go into overdrive. What can I say to fix this? What explanation will make it better? We rush to fill the silence, believing that words are our best tools for repair. But sometimes they're not. There are moments when the most powerful thing we can do is say absolutely nothing. Let me tell you a story. There was a team leader I once worked with, a sharp, confident guy, always had an answer, always had a plan. He was respected, even admired. But one day he made a call that backfired badly. It was one of those decisions where in hindsight you wonder what on earth you were thinking. The fallout was intense. Deadlines missed, relationships strained, trust shaken. Everyone expected him to step in and say something. An email, a town hall, a meeting, some kind of explanation. But he didn't. Instead, at the next team meeting, he walked in, nodded, sat down, and just listened. As person after person spoke up, some angry, some disappointed, some just confused, he said nothing. No justifications, no defenses, no rehearsed apologies, and then something fascinating happened. As the tension slowly unraveled in the room, what started as frustration turned into curiosity. People started asking each other, what could we do differently next time? They weren't trying to fix blame anymore. They were building forward. It wasn't that he didn't care. Quite the opposite. His silence was his way of holding the weight of what had happened without deflecting it. He didn't try to protect his ego. He didn't ask for understanding. He gave it without saying a word. That kind of silence, it's not absence, it's presence. It's not passive, it's powerful. You see, in our culture, we've come to believe that leadership means always having something to say, that the faster you speak up, the stronger you appear, that apologizing is a performance, but when we apologize just to smooth things over or to protect our reputation or to tick the accountability box, we strip the apology of its meaning. It becomes more about us than the person we've hurt. Saying nothing in those moments doesn't mean we're avoiding responsibility. It means we're honoring it. It's about creating space for the other person's feelings without rushing to center our own. It's about resisting the urge to control the narrative and instead allowing truth to breathe. Meanwhile, truth to breathe. Now let's be clear. There's a time to speak, to apologize with sincerity, to name what we've done wrong, and to ask how we can make things right. But if our words are not grounded in real self-awareness, they ring hollow. Silence gives us the time to get honest with ourselves first before trying to seek forgiveness from others. Think about the last time someone hurt you deeply. Not a small annoyance, but a real wound. Now imagine that person came to you with a carefully crafted explanation, maybe even a formal sounding apology. Did it help? Or did it feel like they were just trying to ease their own guilt? Now imagine they just sat with you, fully present, no defensiveness, no agenda, just a quiet acknowledgement of the pain they caused. That kind of silence doesn't demand anything from you. It simply says, I'm here, I hear you, I know I hurt you, and I'm not going to take up more space trying to explain myself. It's a different kind of courage. There's a reason we often say, I'm at a loss for words, because sometimes words really do fall short. They can't reach the depth of the damage. They can't reverse what's already been done. And in those moments, silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the recognition that healing isn't always something we can orchestrate. It's something we have to allow. This kind of silence requires us to set aside our need to be seen as good or thoughtful or redeemed. It asks us to step outside of ourselves for a moment and focus solely on the experience of the other person. Not to explain, not to fix, but just to witness. In leadership, in friendship, in family, we are bound to fail each other at times. We are human. But what sets true character apart is not how quickly we speak after those failures. It's how deeply we sit with them. It's easy to mistake silence for avoidance. But real silence, the kind that is grounded in empathy, humility, and accountability, is anything but passive. It's active restraint. It's a choice to make room for reflection. It's a statement that says, I know this matters too much to rush. There will come a time when we do speak, when we do apologize, when we take concrete action to make amends. But when we start from silence, when we allow ourselves to truly feel the weight of what's happened, those words, when they come, carry more meaning. They come not from a place of needing to be forgiven, but from a place of wanting to make things right. That's what saying nothing can do. It's easy to talk. It's much harder to hold space. So the next time you find yourself reaching for the perfect thing to say after you've let someone down, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this for them or for me? Because sometimes the loudest act of leadership, the deepest sign of respect and the truest measure of accountability is not what you say, but what you choose not to. There's a moment we've all encountered, whether as a friend, a colleague, a partner, or a leader, someone close to us is hurting. Not just frustrated or annoyed, but really hurt. The kind of pain that weighs on their face, changes the energy in the room, and makes words feel inadequate before they even leave our lips. And in that moment, many of us, out of love, out of awkwardness, out of the sheer discomfort of seeing someone in pain, reach for the easiest thing we can offer, words. We say, I know how you feel. We say, everything happens for a reason. We say, they're in a better place. We say anything just to fill the silence. And we mean well, we really do, but sometimes, despite our best intentions, our words land like stones instead of comfort. Not because we're wrong, but because they come too soon, because the pain is still raw, because in truth, we can't fix what hurts. We've been taught to believe that the right thing to say can say someone's pain away. That saying something, anything, is better than saying nothing. But that's not always true. There are situations where the most meaningful, most respectful, and most loving thing we can do is stay silent. Be present. And let that silence speak louder than our best rehearsed lines. I remember a friend of mine who lost her father unexpectedly. It was sudden, shocking. One of those moments life gives no warning for. At the memorial, people lined up to express their condolences. And as they spoke, offering cliches, platitudes, and sometimes even nervous jokes, you could see in her face, she appreciated the intention, but it all just felt like noise. She told me later, the only person I remember from that entire day was the one who said nothing. She just hugged me and cried with me. That's it. And that meant everything. In grief, the need isn't for words, it's for presence. The truth is, when someone is hurting, they're not looking for solutions. They're looking to be seen, to be understood. And sometimes what communicates that more powerfully than anything we could say is our silence. Silence in moments of pain tells the other person, I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to be with you. And that's rare. Because it's hard, isn't it, to sit with someone in their sorrow without trying to steer them out of it. We feel helpless, uncomfortable. We want to do something, and so we talk. But true empathy isn't about doing, it's about being present without needing to be the hero, being close without needing to be wise. We often underestimate the power of just being there. In leadership, this is especially true. When someone on your team is going through a tough time, maybe it's a personal loss, maybe it's burnout, maybe it's just life getting heavy, your instinct might be to pep talk them, to remind them of their strength, to push them forward. But sometimes what they need most is simply to know they're not alone. Not coached, not corrected, just seen. The quiet power of silence says, I won't rush you. I won't minimize you. I'm with you right here in this. This kind of silence builds trust. It creates psychological safety. It says, you don't need to be okay for me to stay. And that's profound because when someone is at their most vulnerable, what they fear most isn't the pain, it's abandonment. Being met with discomfort, avoidance, or surface-level sympathy. But when they're met with steady, unshaken presence, with a silence that doesn't retreat or distract, they feel something stronger than reassurance. They feel connection. There's a moment in every deep relationship, whether professional or personal, where the silence matters more than anything you could say. A moment where your stillness, your eye contact, your quiet solidarity speaks volumes. It says you're not a problem to be solved, you're a person to be supported. And that's a game changer. Let's flip the lens for a moment. Think about when you've been the one in pain, the one sitting in the silence. What did you need? Most likely not a string of motivational quotes, not advice, not even empathy expressed through words. You needed someone to sit beside you, to hold the silence with you until you were ready to speak. The people we remember most in our darkest hours aren't the ones who said the most. They're the ones who stayed fully, quietly, faithfully. That kind of presence, it requires humility. It requires the courage to sit in the unknown, in the discomfort, in the not knowing what to do, and still choose to stay. It's easy to talk. It's harder to be silent when we want so badly to ease someone's pain. But the silence isn't empty. It's full of compassion, full of patience, full of love. And sometimes silence is the only language grief can hear. We live in a world that values speed, solutions, and sound bites. But healing doesn't follow those rules. It's slower, messier, quieter. And in that quiet, the greatest gift we can offer is our presence. Not our answers, not our wisdom, just us. So the next time someone in your life is grieving, whether it's the loss of a person, a dream, a hope, resist the urge to fill the space. Don't rush in with words that try to carry what only time and love can hold. Instead, show up, sit down, say nothing, and let that silence speak what your heart already knows. I see you. I'm with you. You're not alone. Because sometimes the deepest kind of love is quiet. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't come from discomfort or avoidance. It comes from deep respect. You notice it in the moments when trust has been broken. A conversation turns tense. Someone who once opened up freely now pulls back. Their words slow. Their eyes search for something, maybe safety, maybe sincerity, and they don't find it right away. And in that moment, if we're honest, most of us do what feels natural. We defend, we start talking, explaining, justifying. We try to patch up the discomfort with words. That's not what I meant. You're misunderstanding me. Let me explain. We don't do it to be manipulative. We do it because it's uncomfortable to be seen as the one who got it wrong, the one who hurt someone, the one who caused the damage. But what if we didn't reach for a defense? What if instead we chose to listen in silence? It's one of the hardest things we'll ever do in a relationship of any kind. Resist the urge to defend ourselves when we feel misunderstood. But it's also one of the most powerful ways to rebuild trust. A friend of mine once led a team through a tough season. Projects were delayed, communication had broken down, and people didn't feel seen or heard. In one of their feedback sessions, a team member, a quiet but thoughtful voice, finally spoke up. He said, "It feels like we're working for you, not with you. Like our ideas don't matter. Like decisions are made before we even speak." The room went still. All eyes went to the leader. You could feel it. The tension, the expectation, the moment where a defensive explanation would have been so easy to give. Something like, "That's not true," or "I didn't mean it that way," or "Let me tell you what really happened." But instead, he stayed quiet. He nodded once. And he just listened. No defense, no spin, just space. Later, I asked him why he didn't explain himself. His answer stuck with me. He said, "Because it wasn't about whether I agreed, it was about whether he felt heard." I realized in that moment, defending myself would have only made it about me. That's the shift. When we listen without jumping in to fix the narrative, we're saying, your experience matters more to me than my image. That's leadership. That's love. That's trust. But let's not sugarcoat it. It's hard, especially when we're misunderstood, or when someone sees our actions in a way we didn't intend. There's something inside us that wants to correct the record, to preserve the version of ourselves we're trying to be. But sometimes the better version of ourselves is born not in what we say, but in what we're willing to hear. And hearing doesn't always require a response. Sometimes just being there, letting the other person speak freely, without interjection, without correction, is the most healing thing we can do. Because when trust is broken, what people are looking for isn't a polished explanation. They're looking for honesty, for vulnerability, for the kind of presence that says, I care more about what you feel than what you think of me right now. We live in a world that rewards being right. That teaches us to argue well, to win debates, to prove our point. But in human relationships, being right isn't always what builds connection. Being present does. Being safe does. Being humble does. And sometimes being silent does. Think about the last time someone really listened to you. I mean, really listened. Without interrupting, without rushing, without trying to flip the conversation back to themselves. Think about how rare that was, how disarming, how deeply human. It's no different on the other side. When we choose to listen instead of defend, we offer a rare kind of grace, the grace of saying, you are allowed to have your truth, even if it makes me uncomfortable. That's what starts to rebuild trust. Not perfect answers, not clever responses, but the willingness to be quiet long enough for the other person to feel seen. And here's the surprising part. When we allow that silence, when we hold back our instinct to jump in and justify, the conversation doesn't become weaker, it becomes stronger. Because people aren't looking for us to be perfect, they're looking for us to be real. Silence doesn't mean we don't care, it means we care enough to listen first. It means we understand that timing matters, that a quick apology or a rushed explanation might only deepen the divide. But a pause, a genuine, heartfelt pause, gives space for something deeper to grow. Sometimes people need to say things out loud, things they've been carrying for weeks or months or even years. And if we cut them off with a well-meaning defense, we interrupt their healing. But if we hold the silence, if we stay present and soft and still, they just might find the words they didn't even know they needed to say. That's not passive. That's leadership. In moments of broken trust, silence is not the absence of engagement, it's the foundation of it. It tells the other person, you matter more than my pride, you're safe here, keep going. And eventually when we do speak, when the silence has done its work, our words carry more weight because they come from understanding, not from impulse. From presence, not from panic. So the next time someone shares something hard with you and your instinct is to jump in and explain, pause, listen, let the silence stretch a little longer than feels comfortable. In that space, something powerful happens. Walls come down, truth comes out, and slowly trust begins to rebuild. Not because we had the right words, but because we were brave enough to wait for the right moment. And sometimes that moment doesn't need any words at all. There are moments in life that leave us speechless, not because we don't know what to say, but because we instinctively understand that no words are needed. These are the moments that command our stillness, when something so powerful unfolds before us that to speak would almost feel like an interruption. I remember watching my younger sister walk across the stage at her college graduation. It wasn't just a ceremony, it was a culmination of years of struggle, resilience, and grit, a long winding road that included health scares, working 2 jobs, late nights, and moments she wanted to give up. And then, there she was, smiling, proud, glowing with the kind of quiet triumph only she could truly understand. My parents stood beside me, and for a few seconds, none of us said a word, we just watched. Because in that moment, anything we could have said would have diminished the beauty of it. That silence wasn't empty, it was sacred. Sometimes silence is the most appropriate, most human response to awe. We often associate silence with awkwardness, discomfort, or disengagement. But there is a kind of silence that emerges not from the absence of emotion, but from the fullness of it. When we are moved so deeply by beauty, by courage, by greatness, that language simply can't keep up. It's not that we don't care. It's that we care too much to reduce the moment to a soundbite. Think about the last time you stood at the edge of something vast, a canyon, an ocean, a mountaintop, that moment when the horizon opens up in front of you and you suddenly feel small in the best possible way. That kind of silence isn't just stillness, it's reverence. And it's the same kind of silence we feel in front of human greatness. A standing ovation, for example, doesn't begin with shouting, it begins with a pause, a breath, a collective recognition that we've witnessed something extraordinary. The silence before the applause is just as important as the applause itself, because it honors the moment. And this isn't just true on the grand stages of life, it's true in the everyday ones too, when someone overcomes a fear, when a team finishes a project that felt impossible, when a child achieves something they thought they couldn't do. These moments may seem small, but to the person experiencing them, they're everything. And the best thing we can offer in return isn't a flood of words, it's the gift of silence that allows the moment to land. There's a story I love about a teacher who, at the end of the school year, gave each student in her class a moment to share their proudest accomplishment. One student, a quiet, often overlooked boy, stood up and said, "I used to stutter, but I haven't stuttered once in class this year." The room went completely silent. No one cheered right away. No one clapped. They just looked at him, eyes wide, some of them tearing up. It was a sacred pause, a shared recognition of something powerful. And then, after that silence had honored what had been said, the room erupted in applause. That pause, that silence, it gave meaning to what followed. When we witness someone becoming more of who they truly are, we don't always need to rush in with commentary or praise. Sometimes the most respectful thing we can do is simply be there for it. Present, quiet, awed. This applies just as much in leadership as it does in life. Great leaders know when to speak, but they also know when to be silent. When someone on the team steps into their own potential, it's tempting to label it, to validate it, to explain what it means. But if we do that too quickly, we rob the moment of its full impact. Sometimes the best thing we can do is simply let it breathe. Let the person own their breakthrough. Let the room feel it. Because silence gives dignity to achievement. It allows the significance of what just happened to sink in. And that's what helps people internalize the truth of their growth. There's also a beautiful kind of silence that happens in teams when everything clicks. When you're collaborating so fluidly, so intuitively, that words aren't necessary. You make eye contact, nod, and somehow know what the next move is. It's like music. You don't need to speak the rhythm. You just feel it. That's not by accident. That's trust. That's shared purpose. And that kind of silent synergy is often more meaningful than the loudest team meeting because it's built not on talking, but on connection. We often measure effectiveness by volume. Who's speaking? Who's commanding the room? Who's getting the most attention? But there's a quiet kind of power that runs much deeper. It's the power of presence. The ability to say, "I'm here," without having to say a word. In our pursuit of success, of growth, of greatness, we can forget that some of the most meaningful parts of the journey aren't meant to be explained, they're meant to be experienced. And our silence is what lets us truly feel them. Whether it's standing at the finish line of a marathon or watching someone you love overcome something you know they've battled with for years, there will always be moments that don't need our voices. They just need our hearts. Fully engaged, fully present, fully silent. That kind of silence isn't empty. It's full of awe, full of appreciation, full of something bigger than ourselves. So the next time you witness greatness, whether it's on a stage across a dinner table or in a quiet act of courage, resist the urge to rush in with words. Let the silence linger just a little longer. In that pause, you're saying everything that matters. You're saying, "I see you. I honor this. This moment matters." And sometimes that says more than any words ever could. There's a moment that tests us more than any challenge we face at work, more than any unexpected crisis or sudden change. It's the moment when we feel the weight of unfair criticism, when someone calls out our character, questions our motives, or paints a version of us that we don't recognize. The moment we hear words that sting, not because they're true, but because they're spoken loudly and sometimes in front of others. It's human to want to fight back, to speak up, to set the record straight. Our instinct is to defend ourselves, to protect our reputation, to correct the narrative before it spreads too far. We want to say, "That's not who I am," or "You don't know the whole story." But there's a different kind of strength, one that isn't rooted in the need to be right, but in the courage to stay still, a strength that doesn't react but reflects, a kind of silence that isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because sometimes, when your integrity is questioned, saying nothing says everything. Let's be clear, silence in the face of injustice is not what we're talking about. This isn't about staying quiet when something wrong is being done to someone else. This is about those moments when someone doubts your intentions, misreads your actions, or tries to diminish who you are, and your gut says fight back, but your character says wait. I've seen this in the most respected leaders, the ones who spent years building trust, leading with humility, and showing up for their people. They get criticized publicly, unfairly, often without all the facts. And they don't rush to defend themselves. They don't take to social media, don't draft a fiery email, don't hold a meeting to clear their name. Instead, they do something rare. They keep showing up because they understand something most of us forget in those moments. Credibility isn't built in a day, and it's not lost in a moment. It's built over time, through consistency, through choices that align with your values, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. One of the hardest lessons to learn is this: not every accusation deserves your energy. Not every attack requires a rebuttal. Some things aren't worth the cost of your peace, your dignity, or your focus. It's not about pride, it's about clarity. The clearest people I know, those with the strongest sense of who they are, don't need to answer every opinion about them. They know that truth speaks over time. That character, when lived consistently, will speak louder than any statement ever could. There's a story I heard once about a CEO who was accused internally of favoritism. The rumors swirled, people whispered, meetings became tense, and yet he said nothing. He didn't go from department to defend himself. He didn't launch a PR campaign. What he did was simple. He continued treating people with fairness, honesty, and respect. He stayed the course. A year later, the team member who had started the rumor left, quietly. And those who had doubted him began to see what was always there: integrity. Silence is not always passive. Sometimes it's the most active choice you can make, because silence, when grounded in character, doesn't say, I don't care. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it to you. And yes, people might misunderstand your silence. They might assume it's guilt or indifference or weakness. That's part of the risk. But the people who know you, who've walked with you, who've seen your actions, not just your words, they're wait and watch. And when your actions stay aligned with your values, your silence becomes clarity, not confusion. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are they don't talk about themselves very much. They don't get caught up in defending their image. They let their work speak for itself. Their values shine through in the way they treat others, in the way they make decisions, in the way they lead under pressure. You see, integrity doesn't scream. It doesn't advertise. It just shows up every day in the choices you make when no one's clapping, in the hard decisions that don't make headlines, in the quiet moments when you choose to stay true to who you are, even if no one notices. And that's the point. In a world that's increasingly loud, where opinions are published in seconds and judgment is handed out faster than truth can catch up, choosing silence is countercultural, but it's also powerful because silence buys you something incredibly valuable. Time to reflect, time to lead with intention, not impulse, time to keep living your truth until the noise dies down and all that's left is who you really are. This doesn't mean we never speak. There's a time for conversation, a time to clarify, a time to stand up and set the record straight, but those times should come from wisdom, not wounded pride. From timing, not panic. From a desire to grow, not to win. And the only way we get there is by learning to sit in the discomfort of not being understood and still choosing to show up with grace. Because in the end, it's not what we say in response to criticism that defines us. It's what we do next. Do we lash out? Do we spiral? Or do we stay grounded? Do we keep building? Do we keep serving? That's what earns respect. Not the loud moments, but the quiet ones. Not the clever rebuttals, but the consistent character. So the next time someone questions your motives and your instinct is to speak up in anger, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what do I want to be known for right now? Reaction or resilience? Let your actions carry the truth. Let your consistency be your reputation. Let your silence be your strength. Because sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is no statement at all.